I can't hear CPAC. Let me hear you. So glad you're here. Grab a seat, have some fun. You ready to have a party tonight? Together, we're all going to save America with a little. Are you happy with the last year, the progress? Anyway, welcome to Hannity. We're broadcasting live tonight from CPAC. We're 2018. We have a lot of breaking news we'll get into in the course of the next hour. The president is now taking the lead to protect America's school children in schools by, you happy about that? By holding listening sessions, offering up ideas and solutions. Meanwhile, predictably, the Democrats, the abusively biased news media, they're playing the same old blame game, hoping to score cheap political points in their push for more gun control. And also new tonight, on this very stage, NRA CEO, Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre blasted critics for trying to blame his organization for the tragedy in Florida. And then you've got the fake news network CNN proving that they are incapable of having a fair, intellectual, fact-based debate about guns in America. And pro-Second Amendment speakers like Dana Lash, who's here with us tonight, was shouted down, called a murderer and worse, and a student now accusing today the fake news network of actually scripting the questions. Now, it's not the first time CNN has done this. We will expose all of this. You ready for our breaking news opening monologue? Let's hit it. All right, in the wake of this tragic school shooting in Florida, President Trump is showing some very strong leadership. He's now trying to find ways to keep America's schools safe, our kids safe. And during another White House listening session earlier today, the president, he offered up ideas and solutions. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We have to harden our schools, not soften them up. A gun-free zone to a killer or somebody that wants to be a killer, that's like going in for the ice cream. That's like, here I am, take me. We have to get smart on gun-free zones. When they see it says this is a gun-free zone, that means that nobody has a gun except them. Nobody's going to be shooting bullets in the other direction. And they see that as such a beautiful target. They live for gun-free zones. I think a concealed permit for having teachers and letting people know that there are people in the building with guns. You won't have, in my opinion, you won't have these shootings because these people are cowards. They're not going to walk into a school if 20% of the teachers have guns. It may be 10%, or maybe 40%. And what I'd recommend doing is the people that do carry, we give them a bonus. We give them a little bit of a bonus. But the NRA is ready to do things. And, you know, people like to blame them, and they do have power and all of that, but they want to do, they actually came up with certain of the rules and regulations that we have now, but we're going to have to toughen. I told them, I said, we're going to have to toughen them up. We really do have to have offensive measures also. I know people don't like talking about it, but we need offensive as well as defensive. We have to be totally defensive, but if we don't have offensive measures within these schools, you're just kidding yourselves, folks.
All right, you have to give the president a lot of credit because instead of engaging in the same old tired back and forth, repeating the same talking points that politicians and media use after these tragedies, he's actually trying to come up with solutions, solving the problem. Now, here's the bottom line. We have a choice in all of this. Do we keep having the exact same political debate that we've had ongoing since Columbine that's not going to change anybody's minds? Or do we actually fix the problem? Do we want to protect our children? Now, remember, after 9/11, well, we fixed the problem of aircraft security, and I am a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and I'm sure people in this room are as well tonight. Predictably, the left and the liberal media that are talking about getting rid of the Second Amendment or talking about confiscating guns like Australia, for a minute, let's take politics out of all of this. Let's just focus on the issue. How do we keep our kids safe in school? Now, the president's saying he wants solutions, and that's why he sat down with students and parents and teachers and governors and state and local officials. Now, he talked and he listened. And by the way, he wants to have a positive impact. This is a simple truth. The left and the media can talk all they want about banning certain types of weapons used by these evil maniacs, But the thing is, you could never stop the evil that exists in some people's hearts. And if you take away and you ban one weapon, these killers, those with evil intent, will use something else. We have already seen this happen. Let's go back to the Virginia Tech shooting, the deadliest shooting in the history of this country. And in that case, the shooter used pistols. And what the left, the media, cannot seem to comprehend or don't want to comprehend is that evil exists in this world. There are murderers, there are rapists, there are child molesters. There is evil. And by the way, if they don't use a rifle in the case of these school shootings, then it's going to end up being a handgun the next time. And then after that, if it's not a handgun, it's going to be another type of weapon or tool. Remember the Boston bombers? They used explosives that were made from everyday products that are readily available. Other terrorists have used trucks, vans, and cars. Others have used knives. Are we going to ban everything? And as much as the left and the media want to think that the government can fully stop these killers with regulations and laws, they cannot. Because people that have this evil, they will always find a way to cause pain and suffering and inflict maximum carnage. The only thing that comes with banning weapons is that you will infringe on the rights of constitutional, law-abiding American citizens that have the right to protect themselves and their families. What's missing are real solutions to protect these innocent kids. You know, speakers at the White House, in this listening session, they brought up a lot of great ideas and solutions that we've been discussing on this show. Now, in the case of the Florida school shooting, there were warning signs all over the place about Nicholas Cruz. We knew that he was mentally ill. We knew he was unstable. We knew he was capable of doing something. The students all seemed to know it, and the same goes for the teachers. There were reports that police were actually called to Cruz's home 39 times over a 7-year period. That's a pretty good indicator. Cruz got into trouble at school. He threatened students. He wasn't allowed to carry a backpack at the school, and he was eventually expelled from the school. The Miami Herald reports that school officials actually sent out an email warning teachers about Nicholas Cruz. And then, of course, you have his social media footprint. He had pictures with guns and knives and all kinds of disturbing photos. Then, of course, the FBI. They were called and warned specifically twice about Nicholas Cruz, and they did not follow up. Now, in other words, every bit of evidence to indicate that this was going to happen was right there in front of us. People saw something, said something, and nothing happened. They did nothing. And we're also learning 2 new disturbing pieces of information tonight. And according to that report, the school security cameras were on a nearly half-hour delay, which slowed down law enforcement and their ability to capture Nicholas Cruz. And the Broward County Sheriff is saying that the armed security officer on the school's campus didn't even enter the building when the shooting was taking place. And instead, the officer took a defensive position outside of the school. This is why we need solutions, we need ideas, we need to fix the problem, we need to protect our kids. And here's the thing. We already know what works, and they're things that we use every day in office buildings and airports and courthouses and other government buildings and other facilities. The key, if you want to solve the problem, is security, and it's not really that hard. Every school in this country needs to have a comprehensive threat assessment that can be done by retired or former police or retired former military, special ops. These schools are soft targets. We need to harden the perimeters around these schools. And for those of you worried about the cost, really? Are we going to really be cheap when it comes to defending our kids? Because I also guarantee you these former officers and veterans, they would line up and volunteer to help their community to keep our kids safe. Now, these assessments need to include ways to secure the perimeter, control every point of entry, and from there, if these experts determine that it's needed, you need to put an ID system in place, 0 exceptions. They need to know everybody that goes into that school. I work in 2 office buildings in New York, 1 for radio, 1 for TV. If you don't have a work ID, you are not allowed entry. Visitors are vetted through a security system, and you must show your ID. And then you're usually checked in case you have any metal objects going in. And from there, on a case-by-case basis, if some schools need it, they should have metal detectors and other security measures. And finally, you have to have an armed security presence at every school in America, and you can hire, right, retired veterans and police officers. Schools can no longer be soft targets. You have to have people there who can fight back and challenge and confront any potential threat. And when you think about the statistic that was brought up at the White House listening session yesterday, the average shooting, school shooting, lasts only 3 minutes. It takes police on average 6 to 8 minutes to respond, which, by the way, is incredibly fast. But why not have somebody already on the scene that is armed, that is trained, and ready to respond and save lives at a moment's notice? We take potential security threats against politicians. Look at the security at the Oscars for these prima donna celebrities at the red carpet. They have every ounce of security you could ever dream of. Why wouldn't we do the same thing for our children? And in addition, right? And in addition to all of that, we also need a much better way to identify and help these kids that are obviously in trouble. There has to be a system put in place to spot kids that we think are disturbed. We need to help them, get them the help that they need. And we have to put a focus on social media, whether it's someone physically monitoring it or easier, somebody reports what's going on in the case of this particular kid, Nicholas Cruz. Now, also on this stage earlier today, at CPAC, he delivered a fiery response to liberals in the media that are trying to blame his organization for what happened in Florida. LaPierre also challenged them to do more to protect schools and to protect our kids. Here's what he said.
Chris Murphy, Nancy Pelosi, and more, cheered on by the national media, eager to blame the NRA and called for even more government control. They hate the NRA. They hate the Second Amendment. They hate individual freedom. In the rush of calls for more government, they've also revealed their true selves. The elites don't care not one whit about America's school system and school children. It's a bizarre fact that in this country, our jewelry stores all over this country are more important than our children. Our banks, our airports, our NBA games, our NFL games, our office buildings, our movie stars, our politicians, they're all more protected than our children at school. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Now, Wayne LaPierre, right? Good points. He also pointed out how the NRA has actually led the effort in many ways to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and from people that shouldn't have these weapons. But of course, if you're watching, well, the corrupt media in this country, listening to Democrats in Washington, they'll never tell you that because they're only interested in demonizing, attacking the NRA, the Second Amendment supporters. It is all predictable and it is all pathetic. For example, all you have to do is look at what's happened during fake news, CNN's gun control, quote, town hall last night. Facts, differing opinions didn't matter. CNN stacked the deck against Second Amendment supporters. Just take a look. Dana Lash will join us in a minute at how she was treated last night.
Let me answer the question. You can shout me down when I'm finished, but let me answer Emma's question. They spoke about that before the president made a move, and they spoke about that before Attorney General Jeff Sessions made an announcement about that too. So that answers your question with that.
Just to interject for a second, though, and I understand you're standing up for the NRA, and I understand that's what you're supposed to do. But you just told this group of people that you are standing up for them. You're not standing up for them until you say, I want less weapons.
We had 3 lawmakers on this stage, and only one of them hinted at reinforcing the background check system. It is only as good as the record submitted to it. Only one of them even got anywhere close to mentioning that. We have to have more than 38 states submit records. That's number one. Number two, we have to develop better protocol to follow up on red flags.
Now, Dana will be here in just a second. And also, you heard people actually saying, burn her. Wow. Now think about that. How can anybody have a serious conversation when one side is literally calling the other side murderers and screaming that they need to be burned? Now, fake news, CNN, they're not interested in solutions. This was all about creating political theater. As a matter of fact, it did nothing to solve the problem. Now, fake news, CNN also has another very serious problem on their hands, cotton hay. He's a Stoneman Douglas High School student, and he actually saved lives during this shooting. And he's reporting that CNN actually tried to script his questions at last night's town hall that he didn't end up participating in because he wasn't going to be a part of that farce. Here's what that student told our own Tucker Carlson earlier tonight.
I just want to make sure I have this straight. So you sent them a long, in effect, essay on what you thought, but they put
Yes,
their
sir.
own words in the question, and they weren't the same as the words you had sent in. They were the producer's words?
Absolutely. They had taken what I had wrote and what I had briefed on and talked about, and they actually wrote the question for me.
But not with your words. I mean, they put their own words into your question, even after they'd asked you to send questions in. But that seems dishonest.
It definitely did, and that's kind of why I didn't go last night. Originally, I had thought that it was going to be more of my own question and my own say, and then it turned out to be more of just a script. And she had actually said that over the phone that I needed to stick to the script.
So the student is saying that fake news scripted his questions. And what do you call them? Oh, okay. And they're saying they'd never provide script questions, and that Colton's father withdrew his name from participating before the show began. But this is not the first time that the fake news network has been accused of scripting questions. Michelle Malcolm put out a great article back in January of 2016 for the New York Post. Here's the headline: CNN's long history of allowing Democratic town hall plants. And here are just a couple of the many examples she found. 2007, CNN YouTube debate of quoted undecided voters literally included a member of the LGBT Americans for Hillary Clinton steering committee, a John Edwards supporter that asked questions about abortion, a log cabin Republican that was really backing Barack Obama, a concerned mother that was a union activist for United Steelworkers that had endorsed John Edwards, and a former intern for Democratic Congresswoman Jane Harman. And we know that the former DNC chair, former CNN contributor Donna Brazile, leaked town hall questions to the Clinton campaign. So they had an advantage over Bernie Sanders in that case. All right, ready to debate this? We have two segments. Stay with us. Joining us now on stage, NRA spokesperson Dana Lash, who was there last night. Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Fox News correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good job. Nice to see you. And Dan Bongino.
What's up, bro? Good to see you, man. Hey, homie.
Grab a seat. Grab a seat.
Got your water.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, this is great. First, I want to say I obviously didn't watch because they're on at the same time, but I watched later. And number one, you did a phenomenal job under the most difficult circumstances. I got to give you. Bring us behind the scenes. You were called a murderer, burn her. What else?
Yeah, well, let me set the stage for you. And first off, I want to say that it's hard to be a teenager. It's hard being a grieving teenager. And it's hard being a grieving teenager who's being exploited by a media and made to grieve or asked to grieve publicly on a national stage. This was an arena full of survivors, victims' parents, and other community members. There were over 7,000 people that were in this arena, Sean. Mm-hmm. And when we entered, you kind of entered like you were Floyd Mayweather going into the ring. I mean, literally, like you came in from part of the arena and you walked through between all these people and you got up on stage. It was pretty chaotic. It started even before I got up on stage to talk. And the whole reason why I showed up there is because the NRA is made of over 5 million members who are also parents.
I'm one.
You're one of them, and you're a parent. Mm-hmm. And we didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
We weren't the ones. I mean, why is it that we're held responsible when here, just as you mentioned, just today we learned that the sheriff's office, here you had a deputy who waited upwards of 4 minutes before they went in. And Sean, we also found out, it was reported this morning, that The parents had reported this murderer to police before. There's a report out there, the records have been discussed in media, where they told police he has threatened people with a gun before. He has held a gun to others' heads. Now, I'm not a member of the FBI. I'm not a member of law enforcement. I love what they do. I appreciate what they do.
You're not doing this because you're being paid either. You do.
I've been a Second Amendment supporter and an NRA lifetime member for a long time. That was a cheap shot. That was a cheap shot by the sheriff because he's trying to cover his backside.
Point of view, that's fine, but what he did was wrong.
It was wrong, and he has questions to answer.
All right, let me ask you one quick question because we have you for 2 segments, which is great. What other names were you called while you were on that stage?
I was called a "See you next Tuesday." They said burn her, murderer. I heard a lot of murders, and then they tried to. Cersei Lannister chanted me shame as I walked out. And I did not. I looked at every single person.
So they wanted Jerry Springer last night.
Yeah, it was, and that's what I mean. Honestly,
that's why we have Geraldo.
Yeah, I mean, CNN should have let their
the original Jerry Springer.
They should have. No chairs were thrown. No chairs were thrown. But that's when CNN should have let their cameras go because that was the money shot that they wanted. I'm sure, right? But people try to rush the stage. There was a woman who rushed the stage.
That's scary.
And at one point, Jake Tapper turned and looked at me and said, "Do you have an escort? You need to get out of here right now. You have got to get out of here right now." And if I did not have a 3-person detail with me, I would not have gotten out of the arena.
That's scary.
And that is not an exaggeration.
In all fairness, Geraldo, he's one of my best friends in life. I love him. I disagree. We disagree on some things. You believe in the Second Amendment. I do. You agree with what I outlined for security measures.
I absolutely agree with it. But Dana said, it is hard being a teenager. I'm the father of 5. 4 of them have passed through the teenage years. It is hard being a teenager. So why in the world does the NRA resist raising the age for the purchase of these deadly weapons from 18 to 21, as the president now advocates?
Well,
this simple change, I want the NRA to embrace this change. I want the NRA. Here's a kid who was visited 39 times by the cops. He's a kid, they wouldn't let him carry a knapsack into the school.
They banned
and yet this kid could buy an AR-15 legally? Please,
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I will say this. If there were so many signs, it is embarrassing they didn't get this kid earlier.
He can't buy a beer, Sean.
But we'll come back. And we'll continue. We'll pick it up. I promise we have a full segment next with our panel. Later, Kellyanne Conway on the stage right here at CPAC. Straight ahead. All right, as we continue from CPAC 2018, still with us, Dana Lash, Katie Pavlich, Dan Bongino, Geraldo Rivera. All right, let me give Dan a chance to respond to Geraldo and what he was saying. He doesn't want young people. By the way, young people that are mentally disturbed, nobody wants them to have a gun. I don't think there's one person here. If the cops come to your house 39 times, they only came to mind 29 when I was young. But in all seriousness, no, that kid is troubled. We knew he was troubled.
Sean, listen, we all agree, although this kid should not have been anywhere near a firearm. But it is an entirely disingenuous argument to say that we're going to send our 18-year-olds overseas, by the way, with the very same weapon to fight for your freedom, theirs, and everyone else. And then when they come home and say, by the way, you're not emotionally mature enough to use that almost exact same firearm in a lesser format in many cases when you're on American soil. That is an entirely
why do we keep
argument.
These kids from booze? Why? Why?
Booze is not the
because they're evolving as people.
That's a straw man argument.
They are evolving.
It is not the same thing.
They are going through angst. They are mad at their girlfriend.
But you didn't answer my question.
Why do we one at a time? Go ahead.
You didn't answer my question. Why do we send them overseas with a firearm to defend our freedom and then tell them when
you mentioned it is the exact same weapon. I know.
All right, hang on. Let me bring Katie Pavlich in.
Look, I think we need to stop calling this guy a kid, first of all. He was 19 years old. He was not a child. He was 19 years old. He was a grown adult. Hold him responsible for his actions. Stop giving him a way out. Second of all, this is a direct result of the government failing at every single level. The third thing that we need to emphasize is that teachers are willing to step up. Not all of them, but some of them. This is not a new concept. Teachers around the country and school districts all over the place have stepped up to the plate. They are armed. They are ready to take on a violent threat when it comes to their door.
Wouldn't it be better that teachers teach? I'm not against teachers having guns in the classroom if they want and they're trained. What about retired police and retired military there for that job?
That's fine, Sean, but they can't be everywhere. Let me tell you, this isn't coming from me. This is not my opinion. I talk to teachers. I know teachers who are in the classroom who have been firearms owners for 30 years who are trained.
Yeah, they should definitely
Academy came out today saying they're going to offer free training to superintendents and presidents of school boards to make sure they know what they're doing. They are begging. They are begging to get out from under the bureaucracy.
This is
begging for it.
The NRA has a School Shield program that has reinforced and hardened schools, 150 schools so far across the country. Now, one of the things that you had asked, Geraldo, was about age restrictions. Do you think Sutherland Springs murderer was 27 years old? Are you telling everyone here that you think that making this guy wait a couple of years is going to solve his psychosis?
I am telling you that Saturday night I sat this close to the President of the United States, who described to me the nature of the wounds of those children in that hospital. He was so wait a second. He was so deeply impressed and moved and troubled. So he has now adopted this juvenile assault weapons ban as part of his program. We need to do something. It won't solve the problem, but the NRA, if it doesn't want to be on the junk heap of history, will adopt this modest reform.
All right, one at a time.
That spin is one of the reasons. That spin is one of the reasons why Dan and I are at NRA.
Do you want to do nothing? Do you want to do nothing? Do you want to just do nothing?
Geraldo!
Just leave it the way it is.
Do you want a solution or do you want to scream?
No.
First off, this is why Dan and I.
Let's make sure our audience at home can hear. Go ahead. You agreed we ought to have armed guards, police retired. Okay, so everybody here agrees with that. So they want to do something.
I had a vice principal who, in the summertime, was a New York State trooper. He would be, and he was a football coach. He's a perfect guy to have a weapon. He's
in school.
He's licensed.
In school. All right, Dana, go ahead, make your point.
What about 20-year-old women like me who didn't live at home?
Yeah,
I lived out on my own. Katie and I were not 21. And we lived at home alone.
How can you argue
that
a pistol is just as deadly as an AR-15? You could. Why don't you arm yourself with something other than an assault weapon?
So it's okay if somebody has something chambered in 223, but I mean, if crying out loud, I don't think you first off understand ballistics or understand firearms. Number one. Number two.
30 assignments. 30 assignments in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I don't understand ballistics.
Do you want me to take you shooting?
All right, hang on. Let's bring one at a time. Katie, go ahead.
The reason why the age limit for handguns is different than the age limit for semi-automatic rifles is due to the 1968 Firearms Act. And the reason why handguns are 21 is because Congress at the time focused on the fact that handguns were used in the majority of crimes. Well, that is still the case today, which is why the numbers still stand.
That was Virginia Tech.
Correct. The majority of crimes that we see that are carried out with handguns, with firearms, 45 to 65% of them are with handguns. 2.2% of them are carried out with rifles. The other thing I want to address.
5 out of 6 massacres, last massacres.
I didn't talk over you, Geraldo. Let me just finish my point. You talk about. You just admitting that what you're calling a juvenile assault weapons ban won't solve a problem. You're not allowed to infringe on people's constitutional rights if it won't solve a problem.
Dan Bongino, hang on, then we'll go to Geraldo. I'll give you the last word. Real quick.
It is a small step, but it is a positive
And you just said it won't solve anything.
Sean, this entire debate is based on a faulty premise that I think, Geraldo, you're falling into this trap, okay? Criminals don't give a crap about gun laws, okay? They don't care. Guys, listen, what is the defining characteristic of a criminal? They are outlaws. They don't care about rape laws, robbery laws, burglary laws, gun laws. You are not slowing them down. I was in the streets.
This is the same defeatist attitude that prevents us from doing anything.
It's not defeatist.
It won't solve the whole problem, so we won't do anything.
Geraldo, wait, just focus on me for 1 second. We agree that we need, if we put retired police and military in the schools, we do threat assessments.
Background check.
Geraldo, what I'm saying to you is we all agree that we could secure every school with armed, retired military and police. Right. You agree with me?
Teachers, if they choose.
Sean, if 5 of the last 6 massacres were committed with AR-15s, there is a reason for that.
But the school won't be able to be penetrated.
All of the booing and all of your activism pales when you see those dead bodies and those children mangled.
Geraldo,
last word,
quickly,
Dana. We got to roll.
Really quickly, 8 of the last mass casualty incidents, these individuals were known to the FBI who dropped the ball. They were all known individuals.
Over and over again.
I agree.
The law-abiding should
on
not
that
be
point of agreement, I got to roll. Listen, you guys have been amazing. This was a real debate tonight. So let's give it up to everybody here. Thank you all. Kellyanne Conway, as we continue from CPAC. That's next.
I want my schools protected, just like my banks are protected, just like everything else. And I get a kick. I was watching a politician, weak, ineffective politician last night. I'll tell you his name, but I don't want to embarrass anybody. And he was talking about no guns, no this, no that. And yet he's surrounded by 3 guys carrying guns. I said, well, when are they going to give up their guns? They're not going to give up their guns. But he wants everybody else to have no guns, all right? And you have plenty of them.
All right, that was from today's listening session. That was at the White House, 2 days in a row, following this horrific mass shooting last week. Well, the president has now shown leadership. He's trying to find solutions, keeping our schools and our kids safe. Joining us now, a big, warm CPAC welcome to the counsel to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Wow. All right, so there have been a lot of school shootings, like a lot of issues, like everybody talked about opening Anwar and nobody did it till President Trump did it.
That's right, moving Jerusalem.
Everyone talked about moving the capital to Jerusalem. Nobody did it but Donald Trump. Is he going to now solve this problem of school shootings?
I believe he can, and he will. I think we should all be very grateful that Donald J. Trump is the president at this time. For the President of the United States to hold back-to-back sessions yesterday and today public safety, school safety, with elected officials, with commissioners of the police, with sheriffs, with educators, and of course the mayor of Parkland, Florida, who's really been a remarkable woman throughout this. For him to do that yesterday and yesterday to have the parents and the students there and those who have suffered over the years, including last week in Florida. Sean, this is a man who's always listening. He has listened to the angel moms and dads. He's listened to the Obamacare victims. He's listened to the coal miners. He's listened to the families and the business owners come to the White House and say how they would spend the tax savings that they would get from any cut. He's listened to big business, to small business, to aspiring entrepreneurs, to young people all across this country whose future is more prosperous and more safe because of him. And he's now taken this all the way into, I think, a scourge on our society, and there are many. But for the President of the United States to welcome these people into his house yesterday, they were in the state dining room, and to just listen. He didn't make it about himself, as politicians often do. He didn't interrupt them. He spoke very little, very sparingly. He and the Vice President took into account all of the, I think, the emotion and the grief, but also the resolve and the purposefulness.
We just played a clip of the president. He also spoke yesterday about how the average school shooting is over in 3 minutes. Yeah. Even the best first responders, as great as they are, they need 6 minutes to get there.
Yes.
That's why, and he made another good point. All these politicians, all these celebrities, all these people that would like to disarm Americans that aren't willing to put retired armed military, retired armed police in the schools, they're usually pretty well protected with their own security forces of armed people, like at the Oscars, et cetera. So there's a lot of hypocrisy here, and the lectures that come from people that themselves have security and armed guards falls flat, at least on my ears, and I think most people here.
This president is pretty adept at pointing out hypocrisy. And I think in this case, it's been said by many people over the last week, and it's indubitably true, that if we really care about our children, and we all do in this country, then we have to at least protect them the way we protect many places, stadiums, and obviously banks have been talked about.
Concerts.
Clearly, anywhere where there is a celebrity. I look at our children much that way. I think they're our future heroes, and they're celebrities in their own right, in their own households, and I think that they deserve the same protection that many people who can afford it.
You know, I have a scenario that I think everybody at home and everybody here, I want you to just think about for 1 second. If, God forbid, you ever find yourself in any administration building, I don't know where or how this ever would happen, and there's an active shooter, would you or would you not want retired armed military, retired armed police on site so you have a fighting chance? I think we owe that to America's children as a simple, fundamental, basic front line of defense.
The president made that point again and again today, and for the second consecutive day, he had the cameras rolling and the mics open the entire time. Unscripted, unrehearsed, unfiltered, and I would say quite unexpected. And he made that point today. We need to harden our targets, and our schools need to be places where a would-be mass murderer believes that he or she is not going to have their way there, that if they know that they can't easily get in and do their damage, that they will think twice about that. And he made that very clear. He came in really tough today about that because he wants to make sure that we solve this once and for all. These are necessary conversations and not easy solutions, but we should give, I think, the president and the vice president and others
what do you make of the
great
liberal
credit
media?
For having that conversation.
What do you make of the liberal media? And they're just, within seconds and hours, they're out there with their predictable talking points and attacking the president. What?
They're really missing the essence of what yesterday really was about. If you listen very carefully to the people in that room, and they had the floor, they came there with ideas. They came there with, certainly with controversies. I think that the disagreement in the room yesterday over policy from the affected families reflects very much the disagreement across this country. But that disagreement needs to be heard, and the different ideas need to be aired. And what I believe is that you still have, I think there are many people in the media who are trying to get the story. I think there are still too many who are trying to get the president. And it's unfortunate that would happen after a day like yesterday, where even some of his fiercest critics say it was a very positive event. It was a very good thing for him to have hosted at the White House. At the same time, anybody who came away yesterday and took one little snippet and tried to manipulate anybody's words is really being disingenuous as to the tone and the content of the entire event, and being quite disrespectful to the people who were in the room, who were really the ones speaking.
Kellyanne Conway, let's give her a big, warm CPAC welcome. It's always great to have you. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. And hang on, coming up, new developments on the phony anti-Trump, Clinton bought and paid for dossier. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, Matt Schlapp, all next. Stay with us. All right, tonight, Fox News has confirmed David Kramer, former State Department official, aide to Senator John McCain, has invoked the Fifth and will not testify about the anti-Trump dossier's Russian sources to the House Intel Committee. And joining us now from the American Conservative Union, he puts CPAC together every year, the one and only Matt Schlapp. Fox News contributor, investigative reporter Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. This is a big deal, especially in light of Devin Nunes now saying he wants an answer from Obama officials for 10 questions specifically related to the phony, bought and paid for Russian dossier that Hillary tried to manipulate the American people with.
Yeah, and it's very significant, Sean, because if you look at who they're asking these questions, these are senior Obama administration.
Do we know more? Clapper, Brennan?
Yes, we know Clapper, we know Brennan, we know Comey are all being asked. There are quite a few others, State Department officials, I know for sure. I don't want to go in that direction until we verified it yet, but there's quite a few people involved here. Now, with David Kramer, this is significant and important because he was a State Department official, but remember, he was the guy that went to get the dossier for McCain, and he brought it back. The FBI already had the dossier. We know that the FBI had obtained that dossier earlier that summer. He goes back, he gets the dossier, and he's pleading the fifth because he doesn't want to answer one question in particular.
And what is that question?
Did he leak it to BuzzFeed? I know.
Greg Jarrett, what's fascinating, Fusion GPS, the FBI, nobody verified the dossier. And then they brought it, Comey even said in January of 2017 to the president-elect it was salacious and unverified. But in October, they went before a FISA court, and the bulk of that FISA application was that phony Hillary Clinton bought and paid for dossier, and they never told the FISA judge that it was Hillary Clinton bought and paid for. They put a footnote in it, may be political.
And it's arguably 6 different felonies for doing that. But the Kramer thing is interesting because he appeared before the Intelligence Committee December 19th, and he said, I know who Steele's sources are. And the committee said, who are they? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. So they slap him with a subpoena to make him tell them. And now he invokes the fifth. Why would he do that? Maybe he doesn't know the sources and didn't tell the truth, which is why he's invoking the fifth. It's hard to know sources, Sean, that don't even exist. If he knows the sources and he's invoking the fifth to protect them, that's an illegal use of the Fifth Amendment privilege.
You know, let me ask Matt a different question, a little offbeat. You know, everyone says, well, the president is a nationalist populist. I've been a Reagan conservative, 30 years in radio, my 23rd year in Fox. I see him as a Reagan conservative, the way he's governing.
Absolutely.
And I know you take heat at CPAC every year, but you're having the biggest crowds. The president will be here tomorrow. It's going to be a mob scene.
That's right.
And I see him as a conservative. How do you see him?
I just think these terms, all this jargon and all this lingo, you got to break them down. I'm okay with a president that's awfully patriotic and cares about our country and will fight for our country. Other people say, well, he's a nationalist. And I think that they don't get the fact that if you believe that the government is too big and does too much, if you believe we should have constitutionalist judges, if you think the tax code should not take all of our money and redistribute
Isn't this all Reagan? You haven't said one thing that's not Reagan.
Exactly. So what I say is get rid of all the titles and the jargon and look at the actions. And people who are still in this kind of never Trump mantra, they're intellectually dishonest because they told us he wouldn't govern as a conservative. And that's just not what he did for the last year.
Well said. What's going to happen? What's the next phase? We only have a short period of time with the dossier.
Well, we certainly know that the Inspector General, is looking into this. The DOJ
We should know in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we should know in a couple of weeks, and that's regarding the FBI's handling of the Clinton email server, but that expands because we know that he's investigating Andrew McCabe, the deputy director. We also know that Senator Grassley had made a criminal referral on Christopher Steele, and that's going to be very important in the
We'll have a lot more on tomorrow night's Hannity. You guys have done phenomenal work. Matt, great job with CPAC.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us. When we come back, more Hannity and a lot of football. All right, tonight, Fox News has confirmed David Kramer, former State Department official, aide to Senator John McCain, has invoked the fifth and will not testify about the anti-Trump dossier's Russian sources to the House Intel Committee. And joining us now from the American Conservative Union, he puts CPAC together every year, the one and only Matt Schlapp. Fox News contributor, investigative reporter Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. This is a big deal, especially in light of Devin Nunes now saying he wants an answer from Obama officials for 10 questions specifically related to the phony, bought and paid for Russian dossier that Hillary tried to manipulate the American people with.
Yeah, and it's very significant, Sean, because if you look at who they're asking these questions, these are senior Obama administration.
Do we know more? Clapper, Brennan?
Yes, we know Clapper, we know Brennan, we know Comey are all being asked. There are quite a few others, State Department officials, I know for sure. I don't want to go in that direction until we verified it yet, but there's quite a few people involved here. Now, with David Kramer, this is significant and important because he was a State Department official, but remember, he was the guy FBI that went to get the dossier for McCain, and he brought it back. The FBI already had the dossier. We know that the FBI had obtained that dossier earlier that summer. He goes back, he gets the dossier, and he's pleading the fifth because he doesn't want to answer one question in particular.
And what is that question?
Did he leak it to BuzzFeed? I know.
Greg Jarrett, what's fascinating, Fusion GPS, the FBI, nobody verified the dossier. And then they brought it, Comey even said in January of 2017 to the president-elect it was salacious and unverified, but in October they went before a FISA court, and the bulk of that FISA application was that phony Hillary Clinton bought and paid for dossier, and they never told the FISA judge that it was Hillary Clinton bought and paid for. They put a footnote in it, may be political.
And it's arguably 6 different felonies for doing that. But the Kramer thing is interesting because he appeared before the Intelligence Committee December 19th, and he said, I know who Steele's sources are. And the committee said, who are they? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. So they slap him with a subpoena to make him tell them. And now he invokes the fifth. Why would he do that? Maybe he doesn't know the sources and didn't tell the truth, which is why he's invoking the fifth. It's hard to know sources, Sean, that don't even exist. If he knows the sources and he's invoking the fifth to protect them, that's an illegal use of the Fifth Amendment privilege.
You know, let me ask Matt a different question, a little offbeat. You know, everyone says, well, the president is a nationalist populist. I've been a Reagan conservative, 30 years in radio, my 23rd year in Fox. I see him as a Reagan conservative, the way he's governing.
Absolutely.
And I know you take heat at CPAC every year, but you're having the biggest crowds. The president will be here tomorrow. It's going to be a mob scene.
That's right.
And I see him as a conservative. How do you see him?
I just think these terms, all this jargon and all this lingo, you got to break them down. I'm okay with a president that's awfully patriotic and cares about our country and will fight for our country. Other people say, well, he's a nationalist. And I think that they don't get the fact that if you believe that the government is too big and does too much, if you believe we should have constitutionalist judges, if you think the tax code should not take all of our money and redistribute
Isn't this all Reagan? You haven't said one thing that's not Reagan.
Exactly. So what I say is get rid of all the titles and the jargon and look at the actions. And people who are still in this kind of never Trump mantra, they're intellectually dishonest because they told us he wouldn't govern as a conservative. And that's just not what he did for the last
year. So what's going to happen? What's the next phase? We only have a short period of time with the dossier.
Well, we certainly know that the Inspector General, is looking into this. The DOJ
We should know in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we should know in a couple of weeks, and that's regarding the FBI's handling of the Clinton email server, but that expands because we know that he's investigating Andrew McCabe, the deputy director. We also know that Senator Grassley had made a criminal referral on Christopher Steele, and that's going to be very important in the
We'll have a lot more on tomorrow night's Hannity. You guys have done phenomenal work. Matt, great job with CPAC. Thank you for having us. When we come back, more Hannity and a lot of football.